Thought we wouldn't notice, but we did.
Okay, Jarvis, where we at with my Iron Man suit model?
Around about here, sir.
Yeesh.
My thoughts exactly, sir.
Yeah, that's bad. I don't suppose you could put it all together for me?
Very well, sir. Compiling now. Render complete.
Nice. Hey guys, welcome to Film Learnin, the show dedicated to learning some filmmaking and learning good. And no doubt you've guessed what we're doing on today's episode, thanks to that short that played like 10 seconds ago. Today we're doing some Iron Man style holograms. Pretty cool, huh?
My God.
Now the cool thing about this 3D hologram effect is that it's actually true 3D with depth of field and parallax and everything, because we're actually going to be making this thing in Cinema 4D. Now you might have been asking, what's Grant been up to? Well, I gotta tell you, I've been pretty busy.
Go, go, go!
Oh yeah! Oh yeah!
Catch me if you can.
Now guys, this is a relatively easy effect to pull off, but it does have a few steps, so how about I shut up and let's get into it, shall we? Okay guys, here we are in After Effects and I've got my shot set up in a comp and ready to go. Now this one is a pretty long shot, but that's okay. It has a bit of movement, so it's going to prove to be a good example. So our first step here is to track the camera in this scene, so let's run the 3D tracker. Now, we've tackled integrating 3D models into our scene in the Stranger Things Upside Down Effect episode that you can check out in the card above and down below. But the difference between these shots is that in the Stranger Things one, there was no people in the shot, so the situation calls for a little bit more work. Okay, our track's done, but as you can see, we do have a bit of a problem. You can see that as I scrub along the timeline, there is a whole bunch of tracking markers showing up on me/my actor. And since we're moving around a decent amount here, the moment I try to create a camera based on this particular 3D track, it's going to spit out a 3D camera move including my actor's movement, which is not what we want. If we go into Cinema 4D and actually see this, it's going to be a very screwy camera move and not the smooth pan that I'm hoping for. So how do we solve this? Well, I could scrub through and delete all the points on my actor, but that's a lot more time consuming than what I actually did, because each time you delete a point or a group of points, it's going to have to solve that camera again. So this is how we fix that. So in order to get a better track of this shot using the 3D tracker, we gotta mask that actor out. For this, I'm gonna head to Effect, Boris Effects, and grab Mocha. We'll then hit the logo and get started. So once Mocha's loaded up, I'm gonna grab the X-Spline tool and draw a rough spline around my actor like so. I'm going to set the percentage to 90%, check off everything except for translation, and we'll hit track. Now gang, you might ask why I don't just use the roto brush tool in After Effects, and here's the answer. This doesn't have to mask 100% of the actor, just enough to fool the tracker. And 2, the roto brush is very resource heavy and takes far too long, especially in a shot like this. I'm just going to skip ahead until the track's done. There we go, and as you can see, I've made some keyframe adjustments so that my actor's head stays within the bounding boxes of that mask. But that's all done now. All we're going to do now is hit save and head back to After Effects. Let's now then collapse down the matte settings, hit apply matte, and we'll check invert. Bam, our actor is essentially gone from the shot now. Let's now pre-compose this, moving all attributes into the new comp and hit OK. Good. Now, let's run that pesky 3D tracker again. This time I might also just click Detailed Analysis. Okay, tracker is done, and you can now see without any actor in the frame, it's done a pretty solid job of tracking the shot. Now gang, just like with our Stranger Things episode, we're now going to export this to Cinema 4D. But before we do, we need to render the shot as a PNG sequence so that we have some reference footage in Cinema. So let's just open up the pre-comp, turn off that matte, that way we can see our full shot. Then we'll just head back out, hit Ctrl M, that's going to add it to the render queue. We'll then click on lossless, and from the drop down menu, we'll select PNG sequence and we'll just hit render. Now, to export this 3D track into Cinema 4D is pretty easy. We just head to File, Export, Cinema 4D File Exporter is right here. And this will export our After Effects project file as a Cinema 4D file, and bam, it's all done. So, shall we head over to Cinema? Let's do it. Okay, so here we are in Cinema, and I've opened up our exported file from After Effects. Now, at the moment, it looks like nothing's happening here, because basically, we got a camera with nothing in the scene. So, let's add a background. And down in the materials, we're going to add a new material by double-clicking just in the open area. We'll then double-click on that material, unchecking reflectance because we don't need that. And in the color menu, we'll now import our PNG sequence we made, like so. As always, we'll head to Animation, click Calculate to import the rest of the sequence, head to Editor and click Animate Preview. If we drag and drop that material onto our background layer and hit the play button, you can now see we've recreated our shot. But nothing looks different really. That's because we still don't have any 3D stuff in our shot. Now guys, I've already broken up my Iron Man model and I've opened it up in another project. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. Then I'll head back to our current project and paste that in. Let's then position it into place using the positional controls. Sometimes I like to go to multi-view just to make sure it looks right. And you know, I'm happy with that. I'll hit preview and you can now see that we have our 3D track perfectly aping our shot. Now, I know it might seem kind of subtle because there's not a lot of movement in this shot. I mean, it's only on a slider just going back and forth. But the key difference between this and say a 2D hologram is that not only do we have actual depth and parallax to your hologram, you also have the ability to dial in depth of field. So these pieces here that are closer to camera will be out of focus, while the pieces that are closer will be sharper, which really does help selling the hologram in the shot even more, because your background here is out of focus, your foreground actor is in focus, so naturally anything you composite into that shot needs to have those same depth of field values. Now the question then becomes, how do I turn this model into the hologram that I had in the final shot? Well, let's answer that because honestly, it's really not that hard. What I'll start by doing is turning off the background layer, like so. And next, I'll head to Render Settings, and from the drop-down menu, I'm going to select Cell Renderer. And I'm going to open that up, obviously. I'm going to check Outlines, and then I'll swap these colors so the background is now black, and the outlines are now white. Done. If we check out a preview render, you can now see we're exporting a wireframe of our model pieces, and it looks kinda just like a hologram. Cool, huh? Well, it actually gets cooler. Let's head back into our render settings, and under Save, we're gonna choose the output format as RPF. And we might as well check Alpha as well. Now I'll explain about RPF a little bit later on, because it's a game changer for me, honestly. Now let's designate a save point, we'll render it out, and we'll head back to After Effects. Okay, we're back in After Effects and I've imported in our RPF sequence. So the first thing I'm going to do is drag and drop this into its own comp. Now from there, this is where the magic happens. We'll head to Effect, 3D Channel, and select 3D Channel Extract. And wow, nothing happens, it just turns white. But if we start to have a play with the black and white values, you can now see we're actually seeing what looks like a depth map, with the objects in white that are in focus and the back ones starting to grey out and being out of focus. That's what the RPF format does. It actually retains the Z-depth data in an image file, so that you can adjust the depth pass after you render. How cool is that? It's essentially post-focus in a 3D format. Okay, so we've made our depth map now. Let's add the same RPF file to our final shot. Done. Okay, let's bring in our depth map comp and we'll place it under everything. And you can turn it off as well. Now, here's where you have a couple of options, gang. You can use a third-party plugin that I picked up called FL Depth of Field, or you can use the native camera lens blur in After Effects if you don't want to buy that. Personally, the third-party plugin kicks camera lens blur's butt all up and down the street, but I'll quickly show you both. So I'll add FL Depth first and I'll just show you. So in order to dial in the depth, you designate a depth map right here. And from there, you can tell FL exactly where you want the focus to be with this target picker, and then you can dial in the amount of blur you want. How easy is that? Want to adjust the focal point? Pick another. Or another. It's that easy. And say you don't like the depth of field you're getting, just head back to your depth map and adjust it. It'll auto update in your final comp. So essentially you can dial in focus on the fly. Very, very cool. Now the process is a little different with camera lens blur. You can still designate your depth map like so, but that's about it where the customization ends. You can adjust the amount of blur, which really doesn't look as good, but it's still very, very decent for depth of field made very easy. You just may find yourself jumping back to the depth map to adjust it a little bit more. Now the whole hologram look is pretty simple too, gang. Firstly, I'm going to set the transfer mode to screen. I'll then head up to Effect, Color, and select Tritone. Now, you can basically add whatever colors you want here, gang. I ain't judging. Personally, I went with a pale blue for the highlights, a darker teal for the midtones, and finally a darker green for the shadows. Now you can see I've taken a colorless black and white image and I've given it a nice Iron Man style color palette in next to no time at all. Next, some hologram noise that we all know and love. For that, we'll head to Effect, Noise and Grain, and grab Noise. I'll just set this to 5% just to give it a subtle bit of noise, and I'll make sure that both of these boxes are checked. From there, it's back up to Effect, Transitions, and grab the ever present in holograms Venetian blinds. I'm going to set this to 10% completion, the angle to 90 degrees, the width to 4, and the feather to 1. Lastly, I just added some glow using a paid plugin called Deep Glow. Now guys, I have mentioned this before, it's like After Effects Glow with a lot more controls and a lot better response, but I'll also recommend Redshine VFX Optical Glow as well. Both are great, but if you can't afford either, just add After Effects Glow and tweak it until you're happy. A quick tip for that, just try and keep the threshold as high as you can and the radius relatively low, because there isn't a lot of residual glow fall off coming off the Iron Man holograms in general. And hey, if you want them to stand out a little bit more, you can always duplicate your hologram layer, or you can also lower the brightness on your footage layer. Both of them will make it stand out without having to screw around with the glow settings, because once you've got them, you don't want to really screw around with them. But if we check out a preview, that shot is all done. We've created a 3D hologram in next to no time at all. Now gang, if you are interested, I should tell you that if you have the full version of Cinema, you can totally track these shots and avoid After Effects altogether as well. Check out the beginner's guide in the card above. It's how I learned how to do it. Now for those of you who wondered how I shattered the model and put it back together, super easy. You'll also need the full version of Cinema 4D too. All you need to do is couple all of your parts together, like here, right click and group them into a null. We'll then head over to MoGraph, grab a fracture, drop that into our null, and make sure all your objects are children of that fracture. And then we're going to make sure it's set to explode segments. Then all we need to do is head back up to MoGraph, add a random effector, and bam! Explode. I mean, it's not a big explosion, but it explodes. Now guys, all you have to do from there is just play with the amounts and what the random effector can affect. You can do position, scale, and rotation. I personally did a lot of position and a little bit of rotation. Then all I did was keyframe the strength to go from 100% to 0, and then you have your Iron Man suit going from random mess to an actual Iron Man suit. Cool, huh? And as you can see, very easy. Add up all those steps and you get something like this.
Very well, sir. Compiling now. Render complete.
Nice. So guys, that's my take on an Iron Man style true 3D hologram. As you can see, there's a few steps to set it up, but all in all, it's a really cool 3D hologram that you can actually move around in 3D space and have true depth of field that you can actually focus after you're done rendering. Now gang, I know there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do 3D holograms in After Effects using things like Trapcode Form and Element 3D. I just wanted to present a different way using Cinema 4D. I'm also well aware that it's been 3 weeks since I've posted a video of anything, and that's mainly due to me trying to figure out the whole Iron Man suit up thing. At the moment, I'm trying to learn Substance Painter so I can really texture that model and get it looking as best I can, but I do have to learn the software in order to do that. So I'm gonna ask for your patience with the Iron Man suit up because I'm gonna have to delay it. It's just one of those things. I want it to look as best as it can, so I'm not going to rush it. But for now guys, that's all I've got for you. I'd really appreciate it if you did hit that like button. And hey, if you do have a request, make sure to leave it down below because I do read every single comment. You'll notice that I've got hearts and likes all over them. And hey, if you are new here, hit that subscribe button below and turn that notification bell on so you don't miss a single Film Learnin episode. We have over 275 different episodes of Film Learnin, so I'm sure you'll find something here. Now, over there, I've got 2 other episodes of Film Learnin, just right there. I've also got all my social media stuff here. I've got the Instagram and the Facebook and all that jazz if you want to check out behind the scenes stuff and just musings of me in general. And also, if you want to help support us, you can click that Patreon button, or you can join us up here with a membership by clicking that join button below. But until I see you again, guys, keep learning.